Thank you, Father. Good morning. Buenos dias. Annyeonghasimnika. The last greeting is the way the folks in Korea meet one another as they go throughout their day. It literally means, are you in peace? But it's not a question. It's like a blessing everyone you meet. To me, since learning that, it's so much more profound than saying, hi, how are you? You know, or if you're from Boston, how are ya? Anyway, I'm happy to be here, and I'm particularly happy, and Father will laugh, I've been a Sister of Charity for some 66 years. We're founded by St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, and this is the first parish church I've been in named for Elizabeth Ann Seton. So you get a lot of credit. You're right there with the first American saint, and I'm happy to be a part of this night. It's also the 110th World Day of Migrants and Refugees. And tying into what Father was saying, Pope Francis's theme in the words he spoke is God God walks with and within his people. No room for jealousy, no, competing on one another, but be aware of that. And I come to share with you some of the missionary work that my congregation, the Sisters of Charity of Seton Hill, in Greensburg, PA, which is about an hour southeast of Pittsburgh. I want to share some of the work that we've been doing in Korea, China, and Ecuador. I am not myself a full-time missionary, but I'm the only one in the community from Massachusetts. So any call to come to New England, people just assume that's like getting out of bed in the morning. They don't realize it could be a bit of a drive to go to Maine, New Hampshire, Boston, and here. I'm a hospital chaplain in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. So I've done that for many years, but had a life before healthcare. You know that Elizabeth Seton's life journey is a very interesting one, and one that has helped us. Many years ago, when I entered the community, again, the only one from Boston, there were many sisters who heard that a bishop had come from Cholanamdo, Korea, the poorest province in the south of Korea. Some of you might have been in the military there. And he came to Greensburg and said, you have a lot of sisters, and I need help in South Korea. And I often joke, because people think nuns never have conflicts. Well, no, it's like a marriage or a family. So we had a whole bunch of people saying, no, we're Americans. We don't go out of America. And other people saying, yeah, but Elizabeth Seton said, I am a citizen of the world. That means we go where God calls us. And so for something we'd never done before, 100 sisters volunteered to go to South Korea. 4 of them were chosen, and they got on a slow boat to Korea and eating kimchi, learning how to speak the language, and above all, doing what I think is the key to being a good missionary, which is they went there knowing God got to South Korea long before we did. And so the job is not to try to make a new people out of this, because we've come from the United States. It's to insert ourselves in the mission. And that's what those 4 sisters did. And my own brother was a Franciscan in Brazil, and he did the same thing. And another one of my sisters, one next to me in my family, she was a missionary in Latin America in different countries. It's a gift to be able to do that. And sometimes people say, well, it's okay, it was easy, isn't it? No, it's not easy to pack up and leave your home and family and customs. But our sisters went. Most of them were teachers in the United States, and they learned that there was many opportunities to be of help. In the South Korea where we were called, there were no women and children that received any education whatsoever. And the bishop who invited us to come said, do what you can to help these women become good wives and mothers and lay people. And they did that indeed. and many forms of teaching all those years since 1960. Today, our sisters, the Americans that have been there or are there now, and the Native Koreans, they serve the blind, they serve the deaf, the multiply handicapped, and I'm amazed. I was a teacher of the deaf and the blind for a while, but teaching is not my gift, but that they are very, very good with children on the autism spectrum. And that's an issue in the United States, it's an issue in Korea, it's an issue in China, and the sisters seem to have a special gift of helping these children who are very gifted but need assistance with socialization, etc. But we also do many other things. We serve the blind, the deaf, and we have services for the elderly and migrants who are brought to Korea. The men couldn't find women in Korea to marry, and so they spoke to people from other countries and said, send your women to us. We want to marry them. Now, yesterday there was a Korean woman right behind me, I didn't know that, in that chair, and she and her husband were laughing, and they said, it's true. You come from two other cultures, it is not easy to love and learn to adapt one another, and that's what happened. A lot of these women said, this is not for me, and tried to run away. And so just to help the cause, we also had a home for runaway wives. I called them the bartered brides that were not happy. But we also have runaway for children. We have nursing home for neglected elderly, that's new. And before long, word of the gifts the sisters had went throughout South Korea and elsewhere. The Koreans from South Korea or North Korea, when they were trying to escape in the war to China, some of them went into China, and they also have a high incidence of Asperger's syndrome. And so the Chinese government, not knowing we were sisters, that's one advantage to not wearing a habit, though I wore the habit of Elizabeth Seton, the bonnet, and ordinary clothing is what she told us we should be wearing, and that's what we do now. But they're not allowed to wear the symbol, the ring, have prayer in public, but they're there to serve those people. And they were doing a wonderful job in China. Something happened, I think some political, but I don't know that for sure. And so suddenly the Chinese government that invited them built a school and had already offered to have another school where we were going to serve. You can't stay in China unless you're native-born Chinese. We had 4 sisters there, 3 were native Korean, and 1 was Chinese native, Sister Fushi. I got to meet her. I was in South Korea for about a month this summer, and Fushi is a force to be reckoned with. She's the only one there, but she keeps that school going. She spreads the word. She's training lay people to help these children. So, as if that were not enough for the Korean sisters to be doing their own country and China, the word got to Ecuador, and I met somebody at Mass yesterday who was from Ecuador. They invited our sisters to come there because there were many people leaving Korea because it's a small, very full of people area, and many people had gone to Ecuador, and there were many children with multiple handicaps, including autism spectrum, and many of you may have relatives, as I do, who are on that spectrum. And you know that they're bright. They just need some special training. And our sisters seem to me to be particularly trained in that gifted way. There was also, in addition to the school, and now there are 2 schools, there was a small hospital, and because I'm a hospital chaplain, I was interested in that. The maternal fetal death in Ecuador was awful, and they needed something because that hospital could not help women in difficult pregnancies, could not help when children were born with needing particular services that were not there. And so now that hospital is enlarged and treats men as well as women, pregnant mothers, and others. So what I'm sharing is just a little bit about what's a pretty exciting place if you get to go there or if you've been there. But I did have a chance to serve for a couple of weeks in Pedro Carbo. And one day they said, okay, Colette, you're on for lunch. Well, that sounds pretty easy, right? I can do lunch. The problem was there were 63 of us between the children, the lay faculty, and the sisters. And I had 2 of those chickens that you and I buy when we don't feel like cooking a whole meal. You all know that size of that chicken? All right, I've got 2 of those and 53 people to feed. And so, mercy, I had never before taken a chicken and gotten as much meat off of that as I did that day. And I'm careful now when I get one to not waste one iota of that meat. And there was a big thing. I had 4 oranges that I could personally hand squeeze almost right through the edge of it in order to have some liquid, which then we used sugar and water, so enough for everyone to have something to drink. That is not a country that has a lot of help. And our sisters, that's probably the poorest place or the place we most need now to have some help. And one of the folks in Arizona where our sisters taught, one of the fathers, put a big jar at the front of the church and in the head of the school and called it the quarter jar. Just when you go by, drop in a quarter. And you'd be surprised how quickly that filled. And then they said, we want to buy books for those children because the sisters don't have enough money to buy it, and the children need to learn. So we don't waste anything. The sisters don't come and do the missionary talks. A couple of reasons. Their English is a lot better than my Chinese or Korean or Spanish or any of the above, but they also don't want to leave the children. And so those of us that are in this country volunteer to do that in our, what I call my spare time. But I invite you and your assistance in 3 ways. One is, please keep all missionaries in your hearts and in your prayer. Your bishop, your pastor said to my community, you can come and speak. But there are other sisters, brothers, priests in mission work that maybe don't have a chance to come and speak. And it doesn't matter. Being a missionary, letting go of family, foods, relationships, supplies, that is not easy. So I would invite you to hold them in your prayer as well, so that if they get a chance, they can come out and speak to you about their own special work. And secondly, if you can offer any financial support, that would be used only for the mission, not for those of us that come out. We take care of that out of our own incomes, such as they are. But if you can, anything, nothing's too small, not a quarter. And as I often say, $250,000, if you don't know what to do with that, I'm sure the bishop and the pastor, everybody would like some. But any little contribution will go directly to the missions. And then thirdly, and the older I get, the more I'm aware of this, don't say to yourself, I'm a certain age. Like today, there's a lot of young people here, but some of us are octogenarians. And I'm just telling you, don't think God will say, yeah, I retired from my business, I don't have to do anything. Because in God's providence, He calls all of us to keep on keeping on. So we need priests, we need deacons. You all have nice servers here. Not every parish has servers. So be aware that there are many needs for you, and it's not an excuse to say, well, I'm 86 years old, I don't have to do anything. Because the big boss, as I refer to God, is like telling me, you need to go out on the weekend, do something, Colette. Don't just sit and sleep all weekend, okay? So if you're sitting there thinking, I'm finished doing anything for the church, maybe not. Listen to that. My college roommate is the one that wanted to be a nun. She was public school taught, I'm number 6 of kids all public school taught. And I said, well, go talk to some nun. You know, we were at the college, the lights on. Go talk to her. She's nice. You fainted, she picked you up, took you to your dorm room. You don't have to be afraid of her. Yeah, but would you come for moral support? She called her boyfriend that night, I'm going to be a nun. I did not tell my soon-to-be husband that it's all over. No, I went for moral support for her. She's now on her second husband, 4 kids later, and I wound up being the nun. So I'm just telling you, God does funny things with all of us. You don't even have to go out of your way to ask. God will just give them to you. So I would like to end with sharing a poem that was written by a young, I believe, 6-year-old girl in Korea. And the teacher asked the children to draw a picture and then to write a story or a poem that matched their picture. This little girl cannot use her arms or her legs. But she drew a picture with her foot, and this was her poem, Hope. In the picture, I'm standing, but outside the picture, I'm always sitting down. In the picture, I'm eating something with my hands, but outside the picture, my hands are useless. In the picture, my hands and feet are separate, but outside the picture, my feet are my hands. But, I do believe that someday I shall become who I am in the picture. Hope is the message of this child, which I think of often in our daily struggles, in our United States struggles, in our world struggles. We need to be people of hope. And even if we don't have the magic thing to put everything at a place of peace, we still have to have hope. And so I thank you so much for your welcoming, and I can't escape the fact to let you know that not every parish I visited all summer long has a chorus. In fact, 2 of the fellas were here last night for Mass, right, guys? Yeah, okay. Not everyone has a pastor that would invite some of the things you're doing. Not every parish, in fact, very rare, have sitters. I don't mean sitters. Servers, thank you very much. This is what happens when you're 86. You can't remember the name. So to be aware that you have special things going on in this parish. So be grateful and continue to do whatever you can. And I assure you of prayerful remembrance by all the Sisters of Charity, not just those in the Mother House where we have 85, but the Korean sisters that are saying, you are the ones that brought us alive and taught us, so we want to come and help you now that you're all old. So be aware you'll have prayers for many different people, especially those places that most count on all of our help. So thank you and blessings.